You know that midnight math. Sitting at the kitchen table, moving numbers around on a screen, trying to make rent, food, gas, and one more bill fit into money that already feels gone, and still somehow you gave. You helped. You stayed honest when a shortcut could have paid you faster. Heaven saw all of it. This was not wasted generosity. This was financial training. And now the books are opening. If your spirit knows this is your word, type 888 to authorize the opening of your ledger, like this video, and subscribe for what God is releasing next. There are people listening right now who have been generous in seasons where generosity made no mathematical sense. You gave when your own account was low. You showed up for people while quietly wondering how you were going to make it through the week. You smiled, encouraged, helped, worked, carried, served, and blessed others while there was a tight knot in your stomach that nobody could see. And that knot had a name: financial pressure. Not laziness, not irresponsibility, not lack of faith. Pressure. The kind of pressure that wakes you up before your alarm because your mind has already started calculating. This bill on this date. That payment on Friday. Groceries if nothing unexpected happens. Gas if the price does not jump. One emergency away from panic. One delay away from a spiral. One email, one invoice, one overdraft, one repair, one medical cost, one school expense away from feeling like your whole inner world is being squeezed. And still, you kept your heart soft. That is what heaven is looking at, not just the amount you gave, not just the hours you worked, not just the times you helped. Heaven is looking at the condition of your heart while you were under pressure. Because anybody can look generous when they have excess. Anybody can give from overflow and still feel safe. Anybody can bless others when the treasury is full and the bills are handled and the future looks padded. But you gave in the wilderness. You gave when it cost you peace. You gave when nobody clapped. You gave when you had to go back home and do the math again. You gave when you could not even explain why you felt moved to help, except something in you said, "Do it." And I need you to hear this clearly. Heaven did not miss one transaction. There is a ledger in the spirit. Every hidden act of integrity was entered. Every silent sacrifice was entered. Every anonymous gift was entered. Every time you could have taken a dishonest shortcut and refused, it was entered. Every time you did the right thing while watching manipulative people prosper, it was entered. Every time you carried responsibility without applause, it was entered. Every time you gave your last $20 and made sure nobody knew it came from you, heaven took a photo of that moment. You thought it disappeared. It was deposited. And this is where the shift begins. Because God did not keep you in financial training to humiliate you. He kept you in financial training to prove what money could not buy, bend, corrupt, or control in you. That is the part many people misunderstand. The drought was not proof that you were forgotten. For some of you, the drought was an audit. Not an audit to punish you, an audit to reveal you. Heaven was testing the weight-bearing capacity of your character before increasing the weight of your provision. Because wealth magnifies what is already there. If fear is there, money magnifies fear. If pride is there, money magnifies pride. If greed is there, money magnifies greed. If chaos is there, money magnifies chaos. But if stewardship is there, money becomes a river. If wisdom is there, money becomes architecture. If generosity is there, money becomes ministry. If peace is there, money becomes a tool instead of a master. And that is why your training has felt so specific. You were not merely learning how to survive. You were learning how not to worship money when it finally arrived. You were learning how to stay honest when compromise looked profitable. You were learning how to give without needing public credit. You were learning how to pray with an empty account and still not accuse God of abandoning you. You were learning how to remain noble when lack tried to make you desperate. That is not small, that is royal training. And I know some of you are tired of having to be strong about money, tired of turning numbers over and over in your head, tired of being the one people assume can help while you privately need help yourself, tired of hearing messages about faith that ignore the real fear of not having enough, Tired of pretending you are fine when your body has been carrying the physical weight of financial uncertainty for years? God is not shaming you for feeling stressed. He knows poverty can be loud. He knows lack can press against your chest. He knows it can make sleep difficult. He knows it can make you feel smaller than you are. He knows what it does to a person to work hard and still feel behind. He knows the humiliation of declining invitations because you cannot afford the hidden costs. He knows the pain of opening your banking app like you are opening a courtroom verdict. He knows what it feels like when your entire day is shaped by a number on a screen. And still he is saying, I saw how you carried yourself. You did not become cruel. You did not become predatory. You did not make pain your excuse to exploit people. You did not lose your tenderness. You did not let lack rewrite your identity. That matters in the kingdom. You may have felt invisible on earth, but you were visible in the treasury of heaven. And now the audit is shifting, because there comes a time when God stops only testing the vessel and starts filling it. There comes a time when the account that looked ignored begins to speak. There comes a time when hidden deposits become visible. Release. There comes a time when heaven says, this one can be trusted with more, not because they never struggled, but because they struggled and still remained clean. That is a different kind of qualification. Some people only look faithful because they have never been squeezed. You were squeezed and still gave. You were overlooked and still served. You were underpaid and still worked with excellence. You were tempted and still stayed honest. You were drained and still showed compassion. You were afraid and still did not let fear make you wicked. So let this word enter the place where anxiety has been living. Your kindness was not weakness. Your generosity was not foolishness. Your integrity was not wasted. And your struggle is not your permanent address. God has been building a steward. A survivor thinks, how do I make it through today? A steward thinks, what has God placed in my hands, and how do I multiply it with wisdom? A survivor hoards because fear says there will never be enough. A steward manages because trust says the treasury of heaven is not empty. A survivor checks every price tag with dread. A steward learns discernment, timing, value, and assignment. A survivor feels guilty for wanting abundance. A steward understands that abundance is not about showing off. It is about having enough room to obey God without panic. That is the mindset shift heaven is bringing you into. Not reckless spending, not pride, not a fantasy of wealth with no responsibility. Stewardship, peace with resources, wisdom with increase, authority over money instead of slavery under money. The ability to bless without bleeding, the ability to create without panic. The ability to rest without feeling like rest will cost you everything. And this is why the coming provision must not be reduced to one random blessing. God is not only trying to get money to you, He is trying to establish a new financial order around you, a new rhythm, a new expectation, a new inner ceiling, a new relationship with receiving. Because some of you have become so used to lack that overflow would almost feel suspicious. You have learned to prepare for disappointment faster than you prepare for blessing. You have learned to brace before you receive. You have learned to say, I do not need much, when deep down you are exhausted from needing so little and still barely having enough. But heaven is confronting that survival language. You are allowed to desire ease. You are allowed to want breathing room. You are allowed to want your bills paid without terror. You are allowed to want to buy groceries without doing mental subtraction in the aisle. You are allowed to want to create, build, travel, give, rest, repair, invest, and bless without feeling guilty for not being in crisis. Desiring abundance does not make you greedy. It becomes greed when money becomes your God. But when money becomes a tool in the hands of a healed steward, provision becomes purpose. And this is why the enemy fought your finances so hard. Because financial pressure does not only attack your bank account, it attacks imagination. It makes your vision smaller. It makes your prayers cautious. It makes your body tense. It makes your creativity go quiet. It makes you postpone the thing God put in your spirit. It makes you say later to assignments that required now. It makes you spend your best mental energy on survival math instead of kingdom architecture. That is why this release is not only about comfort, it is about restoration of capacity. God is giving your mind back. God is giving your breath back. God is giving your creative fire back. God is giving your ability to plan beyond emergencies back. God is giving your nervous system permission to stop living like provision is always about to vanish. And yes, the shift will have manifestations. For some, it will come through unexpected open doors. For some, canceled debts. For some, a delayed payment released. For some, a favored connection that changes the scale of your work. For some, a sudden idea that carries unusual fruit. For some, a contract. For some, a promotion. For some, a new client. For some, a gift you did not ask for. For some, a door in another city. For some, a creative solution that feels too simple to be accidental. But do not worship the channel. Worship the source. Because God can send provision through places you did not predict, people you did not impress, systems you did not control, and timing you could not force. That is how you will know it is Him. It will carry peace, not frantic striving, not begging, not manipulation, not selling your soul for relief. Peace, the kind of provision that does not ask you to become someone else to receive it. And before this first part closes, I need to tell you why today matters. For a long time, you thought the delay meant denial. But in the spiritual economy, delayed obedience does not disappear. Hidden generosity does not evaporate. Integrity under pressure does not lose value. It compounds. That is the law of spiritual compound interest. A seed planted in tears keeps working beneath the soil. A sacrifice made in silence keeps earning witness in heaven. An honest decision made when dishonesty would have paid faster becomes weight in your account. A dollar given with pure love in a season of lack can carry more eternal weight than 1,000 given for attention from abundance. God measures differently, and because He measures differently, He pays differently. He pays differently. That is why the release coming into your life may feel disproportionate to the visible size of your actions. People may not understand why the door opened. They may not understand why favor found you. They may not understand why you suddenly have room, help, peace, and options. They may not know about the nights you cried over bills and still prayed for others. They may not know about the anonymous gift. They may not know about the work shortcut you refused. They may not know about the times you did not retaliate, did not steal, did not manipulate, did not compromise, did not quit. But heaven knows. The ledger knows. And when the king opens the treasury, he does not need public permission. So prepare your heart for new status, not survival. Stewardship, not begging. Receiving, not panic. Expectation, not shame. Inheritance. You are not being released into abundance so you can prove people wrong with noise. You are being released into abundance so you can prove God right with stewardship. And in the next part, you are going to understand why the season of financial pressure lasted as long as it did, why the selfish seemed to prosper for a moment, and why the channels of provision around you are beginning to open all at once. There is a question many generous people are afraid to ask out loud. Why did it feel like the selfish kept moving faster? Why did people who cut corners seem to win? Why did manipulators seem to have options? Why did the loudest, emptiest, least grateful people seem to keep finding money? While you were sitting quietly with integrity and pressure in the same room, that question does not offend God. He knows you wondered. He saw you watching others prosper in ways that made no spiritual sense. He saw you swallowing the ache when people who used others seemed comfortable, while you were doing honest work and still trying to stretch one amount across 5 needs. He saw you staying clean when compromise had a price tag attached to it. And here's the answer. Not all prosperity is provision. Some money comes with a chain inside it. Some doors open wide because there is a trap in the room. Some opportunities pay fast because they are designed to purchase your peace slowly. Some people look wealthy while their soul is living in overdraft. Some increase is not inheritance. It is bait. That is why God did not let certain doors open for you, even when you begged. He was not withholding to punish you. He was protecting the steward before the stewardship arrived, because you were still being trained to know the difference between a channel and a counterfeit. A counterfeit opportunity flatters your urgency. A God channel strengthens your peace. A counterfeit asks you to betray your values now and promises you relief later. A God channel may stretch your faith, but it will not require you to sell your soul. A counterfeit makes you frantic. A God channel makes you sober. A counterfeit makes money feel like a master. A God channel makes money feel like a tool. This is why your drought had instruction hidden inside it. It taught you discernment. You learned how desperation talks. You learned what fear sounds like in your body. You learned the danger of making decisions just because the numbers are screaming. You learned that not every profitable shortcut is a blessing. You learned that when your stomach tightens and your spirit says, wait, no amount of money is worth disobeying that warning. That training is about to matter, because increase without discernment can destroy what lack only tested. God had to make sure you would not kneel to money the moment it showed up wearing a crown. So he trained you while the numbers were small. He trained you while the account was low. He trained you when nobody was watching. He trained you when the shortcut looked reasonable. He trained you when you could have inflated, hidden, exaggerated, cheated, performed, used people, or moved with a corrupted motive, and you did not. Maybe not perfectly, but sincerely. You kept coming back to truth. That is why heaven calls you trustworthy. Not because you never felt fear, because fear did not become your Lord. And this is the part where the pressure begins to lift. You are not behind because you were forgotten. You are being developed for a kind of provision that requires maturity. There is money that only solves a bill. Then there is provision that changes a pattern. God is not merely trying to hand you a temporary rescue. He is shifting your economic identity. He is moving you from emergency thinking into treasury thinking, from begging for enough into managing overflow, from counting coins with dread into assigning resources with authority. That is a different realm, and the mind has to be renewed to live there, because when you have survived for too long, survival becomes a language. You can have an open door in front of you and still approach it like it might disappear. You can receive help and feel guilty. You can be blessed and immediately start planning for the next disaster. You can get more and still live internally as if you have less. That is not ungratefulness. That is the residue of chronic pressure. God is not angry at you for that. He is healing it. He is teaching your soul that provision does not have to be followed by punishment. That receiving does not make you selfish. That ease does not make you spiritually lazy. That rest does not mean danger is coming. That having margin does not mean you forgot where you came from. Somebody needs to let that sentence settle. Having margin does not mean you forgot where you came from. It means you are no longer required to build your whole life at the edge of collapse. For years, the enemy tried to make your finances feel like a narrow hallway. Just enough room to move, never enough room to breathe. Just enough to keep going, never enough to think bigger. Just enough to serve everyone else, never enough to recover. But heaven is widening the room. That is what provision does. It gives your calling room to move. Some of you have been carrying visions that lack kept shrinking. You had the idea, but not the margin. The skill, but not the space. The compassion, but not the capacity. The discipline, but not the opportunity. You kept saying, one day when things calm down. One day when I can breathe. One day when I am not so consumed by bills. God heard every one day, and now he is answering with a door. But when the door opens, you must not enter it with the old posture. Do not walk into stewardship still dressed like a beggar. That does not mean arrogance. It means alignment. It means you stop apologizing for receiving what God authorized. It means you stop shrinking your prayer because lack trained you to sound modest. It means you stop assuming struggle is proof of holiness. It means you stop treating constant financial anxiety like it is normal spiritual discipline. It is not. There is a difference between contentment and bondage. Contentment says, God is enough in every season. Bondage says, I am only holy if I am barely surviving. Reject that. You are not more pleasing to God because you are exhausted. You are not more spiritual because you are underpaid. You are not more humble because you cannot breathe. You are not more faithful because every month feels like a crisis. Humility is not poverty. Humility is surrender. And a surrendered steward can hold abundance without being held by it. That is the goal. To have resources and remain tender. To have options and remain obedient. To have increase and remain wise. To have comfort and remain generous. To have access and remain pure. That is why your training mattered. God was not just preparing provision for you. He was preparing you for provision. And now the channels are beginning to open. Not one little trickle. Channels. That word matters because heaven rarely moves through only one method when it is time to shift a person's status. One door opens and then another conversation makes sense. One debt gets reduced and then a delayed opportunity resurfaces. One idea returns with clarity and then the right person appears. One act of obedience creates movement, and then favor begins connecting pieces you could not connect by force. This is the rhythm of divine provision. It is coordinated. You may see canceled fees, unexpected credits, a bill adjusted, a debt forgiven, a refund released, a contract approved, a client referred, a job offer, a promotion, a creative idea that suddenly has timing on it, a product, service, gift, or skill that becomes profitable in a way you did not expect. A person of influence remembering your name. A door opening in a place where you thought you had been forgotten. Do not call it coincidence too quickly. When the treasury opens, small things start carrying unusual timing. The right email comes at the right hour. The conversation happens with the right person. The payment lands before the deadline. The idea arises when you finally have the courage to move. The help comes from a direction you were not watching. This is what happens when God moves you from scraping to stewarding. And I need to be very clear. Stewardship does not mean you stop being responsible. It means responsibility is no longer driven by terror. You will still budget. You will still plan. You will still use wisdom. You will still save. You will still ask questions. You will still count the cost. You will still refuse foolishness dressed as faith. But the spirit behind it changes. You are not budgeting because fear owns you. You are budgeting because assignment deserves order. You are not saving because you expect disaster. You are saving because a steward protects what is entrusted. You are not giving because guilt demands it. You are giving because love directs it. You are not building because you need to prove your worth. You are building because heaven placed capacity inside you. That is the stewardship mindset shift. The same action, different spirit. A survivor checks the account and feels judged. A steward checks the account and receives information. A survivor says, "What if this runs out?" A steward says, "Lord, show me how to multiply what is here." A survivor gives from pressure and resentment. A steward gives from clarity and obedience. A survivor is embarrassed by need. A steward can receive help without shame because they understand provision is a kingdom network. A survivor sees money as safety. A steward sees God as safety and money as a servant. This is the inner promotion. Before the outer numbers change, the throne inside you has to change. Money cannot sit on that throne anymore. Fear cannot sit there. People's opinions cannot sit there. The old panic cannot sit there. The shame of past struggle cannot sit there. God sits there. And when God sits there, money goes back to its proper place, under your feet, in your hand, assigned to purpose, governed by wisdom, released by obedience, multiplied through stewardship. This is how peace enters the financial realm. Not because every number instantly looks perfect, but because you are no longer alone with the numbers. That kitchen table where you used to sit and move figures around in the dark is becoming an altar of instruction. The screen that used to trigger dread will become a place where you ask, "Father, what are you showing me? What needs order? What needs courage? What needs patience? What needs a no? What needs a yes?" You are not being mocked by money anymore. You are being mentored into authority. And part of that authority is learning how to receive without suspicion. Some of you are excellent at giving, but awkward at receiving. You can pay for others, cover others, pray for others, encourage others. But when someone wants to bless you, something in you freezes. You minimize it. You feel guilty. You say, "No, it is okay," even when it is not okay. You push the blessing away because being in need feels too exposed. But the same God who trusted you to give is now trusting you to receive. Receiving is not weakness. Receiving is also obedience. There are blessings assigned to your life that require you to stop performing self-sufficiency. There are people God will move on your behalf, and your pride must not reject what your prayer asked for. There are open doors that will come dressed as help, favor, mentorship, sponsorship, recommendation, partnership, and unexpected kindness. Let God use channels. Do not idolize them. Do not cling to them. Do not worship the person. But do not insult heaven by rejecting the package because it came through human hands. God is allowed to bless you through people, and He is allowed to bless you in ways that feel easier than your history taught you to expect. That last sentence is important. Some of you have been trained to trust only what costs you everything. So when provision comes with peace, you question it. When the door opens without begging, you doubt it. When someone helps without manipulation, you look for the trap. When the price is covered, you feel uncomfortable. When the opportunity fits, you wonder if you are missing something. I understand why, but ease can be holy. Not laziness, not entitlement. Holy ease. The kind that comes after training. The kind that arrives when heaven says the vessel has been tested, the ledger has been reviewed, the deposits have matured, and the release is authorized. That is what spiritual compound interest looks like. God takes what was planted in hidden pain and brings it back with multiplied purpose. The time you stayed honest when dishonesty could have paid? Interest. The time you gave anonymously and never corrected the record? Interest. The time you worked with excellence while being overlooked? Interest. The time you refused to exploit someone weaker than you? Interest. The time you prayed for another person's breakthrough while still needing your own? Interest. The time you did not become bitter when selfish people seemed ahead? Interest. The time you kept your hands clean when pressure tried to make you compromise? Interest. 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 And now the account is speaking. The delay was not empty. It was accruing. That is why this next release may not look like one small repayment. It may look like a series of openings that make your old survival math obsolete. One release will solve a pressure, another will create margin, another will activate creativity, another will place you near people who think larger, another will free your schedule, another will give you the courage to invest in what God has been whispering for years. Provision is not just money coming in. Provision is the entire ecosystem around your assignment being supplied. Contacts, wisdom, timing, energy, ideas, favor, health, space, resources, confidence, peace. This is why you must not reduce the blessing to a number. A number can help you breathe. But a new ecosystem helps you build. God is not merely paying a bill. He is funding a blueprint, and that blueprint includes people beyond you. There are lives connected to your obedience, people you will employ, people you will feed, people you will teach, people you will help quietly, children who will grow up watching you handle abundance with grace instead of fear, friends who will learn that generosity does not have to equal burnout, communities that will be served by the thing you finally have room to create. This is why you cannot feel guilty for increase. Your increase has an assignment. You are not asking for abundance so you can become empty and loud. You are asking for abundance so you can become effective and free. Free to obey quickly. Free to rest without shame. Free to say yes when God says give. Free to say no when pressure disguises itself as need. Free to build without panic. Free to bless without bleeding. Free to dream without apologizing. That freedom is part of the inheritance, and I feel this strongly. The spirit of poverty is not just a lack of money, it is a voice. It says, do not expect too much. It says, this will never change. It says, you are safer in survival because at least struggle is familiar. It says, people like you do not get ahead. It says, every blessing will be followed by a bill. It says, hide your hopes so disappointment cannot find it. It says, your kindness made you weak. It says, you will always be used and never replenished. That voice is being judged, not negotiated with, judged. Because heaven is not asking poverty for permission to bless you. The king is opening his treasury for a steward he has trained. So begin to speak differently, not recklessly, not foolishly, not with empty slogans, with authority. My provision is not an accident. My integrity has a harvest. My generosity is not weakness. My ledger is not empty. My Father knows what I need. My assignment will be supplied. My hands are clean. My mind is being renewed. My house is coming into order. My harvest will not be stolen by fear. Say it until your body starts believing what your spirit already knows, because this is the lift. By the time this word is finished working in you, the knot in your stomach will not have the same authority. The numbers may still need wisdom, but they will not be allowed to crown themselves king. The bills may still need order, but they will not get to preach fear over your future. The memories of lack may still speak, but they will not be the loudest voice in the room. Peace is taking the throne. And once peace takes the throne, provision has somewhere clean to land. That is why you are entering this next part ready. Not perfect, ready, ready, ready to receive, ready to manage, ready to multiply, ready to bless, ready to build, ready to stop apologizing for the inheritance God authorized, ready to let the treasury open without shrinking back in shame. The audit is complete. The deposits were counted. The interest has accrued, and the release is no longer theoretical. It is approaching your life through channels that have already been assigned. Now the question becomes, what does a steward do when the treasury begins to open? Because this next season is not just about receiving more. It is about becoming the kind of person who can hold more without losing peace, humility, wisdom, or softness. That is why the shift begins inside, before it shows up outside. For years, survival trained your mind to scan for danger. Check the account, recalculate, delay the dream, postpone the repair, stretch the grocery list. Say no to the thing you wanted. Say yes to helping someone else. Smile when asked how you were doing. Then go back home and quietly wonder how much longer you can keep carrying this. But stewardship does not live from panic. Stewardship lives from order. It says, God is my source, money is my servant, wisdom is my system, generosity is my nature, and peace is my inheritance. That is the royal posture. Not pretending pressure never happened. Not acting superior because provision has come. Not using wealth to prove a wound wrong. A steward receives increase with clean hands and a settled spirit. And I need you to understand this. The blessing coming to you must not be swallowed by the old version of you that only knows how to survive emergencies. You cannot let every new dollar become proof that you are finally safe. God is your safety. Money is a tool. When that order is right, overflow will not corrupt you. It will help you complete what fear kept interrupting. You will pay what needs to be paid, repair what needs to be repaired, save what needs to be protected, build what needs to be pected, build what needs to be built, give where God says give, rest where God says rest, and refuse every false emergency trying to spend the provision assigned to your future, because not every need is your assignment. That sentence may protect your harvest. Some people have been trained to see your generosity as a public resource. They call when they are in crisis. They remember your kindness when they need something. They assume your increase is their rescue. And because you love deeply, you may feel guilty when you cannot, or should not, help in the way they demand. But stewardship requires discernment. A survivor gives to stop feeling guilty. A steward gives by instruction. A survivor gives until they bleed. A steward gives from assignment. A survivor thinks love means immediate yes. A steward understands that sometimes the holiest answer is no. Because this next provision is not only for relief, it is for purpose. God is not opening the treasury so chaos can empty it through old emotional doors. He is opening the treasury so the blueprint can be funded. The business, the home, the healing, the children, the ministry, the education, the relocation, the debt freedom, the creative work, the quiet generosity, the future you kept seeing in flashes while life kept pulling you back into survival. That future needs resources, and God is not ashamed to supply it. So stop apologizing for wanting what is necessary for your assignment. Stop shrinking your prayers so people who worship struggle will feel comfortable around you. Stop treating financial ease like a suspicious thing. There is a peace coming over your finances that will feel almost unfamiliar at first. You will notice it in small ways. Opening an app without dread. Paying something early. Buying what is needed without punishing yourself in your mind. Helping someone without secretly panicking afterward. Looking at the month ahead and not feeling your chest tighten. Having options. Having margin. Having a quiet yes in your spirit where fear used to speak first. That is not fantasy. That is the sound of survival losing jurisdiction. And when provision begins to arrive, do not rush past gratitude into fear. Some people receive and immediately start worrying about losing it. They get the blessing, then tighten their whole body around it like scarcity is waiting at the door to steal it back. No, receive cleanly. Say thank you. Ask for wisdom. Move with order. Then breathe. You are allowed to breathe in a blessed season. You are allowed to enjoy what God provides without waiting for punishment. You are allowed to experience ease without calling it weakness. You are allowed to walk into a store, pay for what is needed, and not feel that old humiliation rising in your throat. You are allowed to be helped. You are allowed to be paid well. You are allowed to charge honestly. You are allowed to build wealth with integrity. You are allowed to leave survival behind. This is not pride. This is permission. And some of you need permission more than you need information. You have heard enough principles. You have managed enough crisis. You have stretched enough small amounts. You have been faithful in the hidden place long enough. Now let your spirit receive the sentence. The season of barely enough is not your identity. It was a classroom, and classrooms have doors. You are walking out with wisdom. You are walking out with discernment. You are walking out with a heart that still knows how to give. You are walking out with a mind that understands order. You are walking out with clean hands. That is why the next wave of provision will not just feel like money. It will feel like oxygen. It will feel like the pressure releasing from your shoulders. It will feel like your imagination coming back online. It will feel like remembering who you were before financial anxiety became the background noise of your life. It will feel like praying bigger without flinching. It will feel like making plans from peace instead of panic. It will feel like finally having enough room to obey, and this matters because obedience requires capacity. There are assignments you cannot fulfill while constantly drowning in survival math. There are ideas you cannot develop when your mind is spending all its strength calculating shortage. There are people you cannot help well when you are secretly empty. There is creativity that needs space. There is wisdom that needs quiet. There is leadership that needs margin. So when God provides, do not reduce it to comfort. It is capacity. He is restoring your capacity to think, create, build, bless, rest, and move. This is why the coming abundance will feel sustained. Not one dramatic moment that fades. Not one emotional high. Not one temporary rescue. A sustained order. A stabilized floor. A new financial climate. You are moving from emergency miracles into established provision. From last-minute rescue into prepared tables. From constant reaction into planned stewardship. From begging for relief into managing inheritance. And yes, there will be moments that surprise you. A debt that loses its grip. A payment that arrives with impossible timing. A person who opens a door without you begging. A contract that carries more than expected. A refund, a credit, a correction, a gift. A creative idea that starts producing. A connection that feels heaven sent. A delay that suddenly turns in your favor. But the greater miracle, will be what happens inside you when it comes. You will not panic the same way. You will not shrink the same way. You will not give from fear the same way. You will not let people drain you the same way. You will not apologize for receiving the same way. You will not call yourself lucky when you know you were trained. You will understand. The audit was real. The ledger was full. The interest was compounding. The treasury was waiting for the appointed time. And today, something in your spirit is being authorized to expect without shame. Not demand, not manipulate, not chase signs. Expect. Expect God to supply what He assigned. Expect clean doors. Expect wisdom. Expect help. Expect unusual timing. Expect old pressure to lose its authority. Expect your hands to be filled for purpose. Expect your house to come into order. Expect your imagination to expand. Expect the kindness you poured out in secret to return as visible grace. This is not because you earned God's love. You already had His love. This is because the season of training has produced a steward, and the steward must be supplied. Now let this become a decree over your life. Father, in the name of Jesus, I come out of agreement with the spirit of poverty, the fear of lack, the shame of needing help, and the lie that struggle is my permanent inheritance. I renounce every voice that told me my kindness was weakness, my generosity was foolishness, and my integrity was invisible. I declare that heaven saw every hidden sacrifice. Heaven recorded every honest decision. Heaven recorded every honest decision. Heaven remembered every anonymous gift. Heaven counted every seed sown in tears. Heaven witnessed every time I stayed clean under pressure. I break agreement with financial panic. I break agreement with survival as an identity. I break agreement with the belief that I must always live one emergency away from collapse. I break agreement with guilt around receiving. I break agreement with every counterfeit burden that tried to spend the provision assigned to my purpose. I declare that God is my source. Money is my servant. Wisdom is my system. Peace is my portion. Generosity is my nature. Stewardship is my new status. Let every delayed blessing come with divine interest. Let every righteous seed produce its appointed harvest. Let every blocked channel open by the authority of God. Let debts be canceled where mercy has assigned cancellation. Let doors open where favor has assigned entrance. Let ideas awaken where provision has assigned creativity. Let connections form where destiny has assigned partnership. Let resources gather around the blueprint God placed inside me. I receive increase without shame. I receive help without suspicion. I receive abundance without pride. I receive wisdom to manage what is coming. I receive peace to hold what is released. I receive authority to say yes by instruction and no without guilt. My hands are not cursed. My house is not forgotten. My ledger is not empty. My harvest is not lost. My future is not bankrupt. My treasury is opening according to the will of God. I will not worship money. I will not fear money. I will not chase money. I will steward what God sends with clean hands, a clear mind, and a generous heart. The season of chronic lack is losing legal ground. The season of sustained provision is being established. The anxiety that ruled my mornings is being dethroned. The math that tormented my nights is being silenced. The ceiling over my expectation is being lifted. I am not just surviving anymore. I am being entrusted. I am not begging anymore. I am receiving. I am not ashamed of abundance. I am assigned to steward it. In Jesus' name, amen. Now take that in slowly, because something has to change after a decree like that. You cannot keep speaking peace and then bowing to panic as if panic is your prophet. You cannot keep asking for overflow and then rejecting every channel God sends because it makes you uncomfortable to receive. You cannot keep calling yourself generous while secretly believing generosity left you unprotected. God protected you, even in the tight seasons, even in the lean seasons, even in the months that did not make sense. Even when you sat at that table moving numbers around and fighting tears. Even when you gave and nobody knew. Even when you worked honestly and watched others cut corners. Even when your body was tired from carrying what no one could see, you were being watched by a king, not watched to be judged harshly, watched to be rewarded openly. And the reward is not only money. The reward is peace. The reward is restored imagination. The reward is open channels. The reward is a new financial floor. The reward is knowing you can receive without becoming selfish. The reward is knowing you can hold abundance without losing God. The reward is knowing your goodness was never wasted. So stand in that. Do not crawl into the next season. Stand. Stand like a steward whose name has been called. Stand like someone whose books have been reviewed. Stand like someone whose hidden deposits have matured. Stand like someone whose father owns the treasury. Stand like someone who no longer has to confuse humility with lack. The provision coming to you is not coming to make you loud. It is coming to make you free. Free to breathe. Free to build. Free to bless. Free to rest. Free to obey. Free to think beyond survival. Free to live without that constant knot in your stomach. And when it arrives, remember who you were in the wilderness. Do not despise that version of you. That version gave. That version endured. That version stayed honest. That version prayed through panic. That version kept working. That version kept loving. That version kept one small flame alive when the numbers said it made no sense. Honor that version. Then let that version rest, because the steward is rising now. The ledger is open. The audit is complete. The treasury has heard your name, and the release is authorized. If you receive this as your confirmation, type "The ledger is open" in the comments, like this video, and subscribe for the next word. Share this with someone generous who needs to know heaven did not forget what they gave in secret.